With Summit 7 in the books, there really aren't too many more events left in Melee's 2018 season, which means many players' end-of-year ranks are already locked in at this point. This is especially true at Melee's highest level of play, so let's take a look at who Melee's 10 best players were in 2018. For the number 1 spot, 3 names come to mind: Hungrybox, Leffen, and Armada. They've all taken home the gold at least one super major this year and have also been tremendously consistent, with 5th being the lowest any of the 3 placed this year. But when we look at the 3 players' head-to-head records against the top 6, a clear number 1 emerges. Hungrybox not only has a winning record on every single player besides Armada, but these records show a clear domination over the highest level of Melee. However, he did rack up many more losses outside the top 6 this year than the other 2. While this is definitely a blemish against his domination, it would have been insane if Hungrybox was able to keep a completely clean record with the sheer amount of tournaments he attended this year, which was more than Leffen and Armada combined. So with all of this in mind, I think Hungrybox is the clear choice for 2018's best Melee player, and with his biggest threat, Armada, retiring from singles, he might stay at the top for a 3rd year in a row if people can't crack the Jigglypuff matchup. That then leaves the 2 Swedes vying for 2nd. If we jump back to their head-to-heads, Armada has a huge edge against Hbox, the 2 are tied against Plouffe and Mutaking, Leffen has a significant advantage in the head-to-head, and Armada has a slight lead against Mango. If we break that down into a record, Armada slightly wins with 2 wins, 1 loss, and 2 ties. But I think the gap in head-to-head is actually bigger than that, as having the only winning record on the best player in the world is such a great feat to have in your corner. But win rate against the top 6 isn't the only metric used to determine one's rank, so let's get a quick idea of their years by taking a look at their placings and losses. The tremendous consistency again is evident right away, with Leffen's 2 5th placings being the worst on the list, and those aren't even that bad as they were caused by Hungrybox and Plouffe facing him early on in loser's bracket because of an upset they took. And overall, I'd say these 2 have results of a similar caliber, with Armada winning and placing better at more large events, and Leffen winning more smaller events while also doing well at large events. But someone's gotta take the 2nd spot. For me, Armada takes it by a very small margin, with his winning record on Hbox and his 2 wins at majors being what tips the scales in his favor for me. Out of all the players on the list, these are the only 2 I could potentially see being swapped on the official final rankings because of Leffen's comparable performances and much higher attendance. But after these 2 who could easily swap positions, we have Plouffe, who is the clear 4th best in the world right now. After starting the year by winning Genesis 5 and shocking the Melee world, Plouffe failed to reach that peak again for the rest of the year. He did fairly consistent throughout the year, only placing lower than 4th twice this year, both at Summit with a 5th and 9th placing. All of this combined puts him in a tier of his own. He doesn't have a good enough head-to-head record or year to compete with Leffen or Armada for top 3, and he's way too consistent against the top 6 and the rest of the field to be a part of the same conversation as Mutaking and Mango. So this brings us to the debate for 5th best in the world: Mango against Mutaking. Some people think that this argument is pretty cut and dry in Mutaking's favor, and that Mango should actually be fighting against Zane and Wizzy for the 6th spot, but that is clearly not the case when you look at the numbers. First, let's look at records against the top 6. Although the score for comparing win rates would be 3-1-1 in Mutaking's favor, they arguably have a similar chance against Hungrybox, and their head-to-head has historically been fairly even, so their single set for the year is a bit of a misnomer. But it's important to remember that it's what happened this year is what matters for the ranking, so Mutaking does come out as the slight favorite when comparing head-to-heads. But what about tournament performance? This stat is also much closer than you would think. Out of the 6 events they both attended, they each outplaced each other at 3 events, leading them to a dead even 3-3. Getting a rough view consistency-wise from the chart, the 2 are about the same, with them both having some questionable losses for a top 6 player, being littered throughout each of their years. But the big thing that Mutaking has over Mango is a 1st place finish. Although I don't personally think winning a tournament should be weighed extremely heavily when determining someone's rank, it's undeniable that it is still an important factor, which is why Mutaking at 5th for 2018 is a no-brainer for me. And this means we have Mango right behind him at 6th. He may have taken some bad losses to Icy's players and Zane throughout the year, but he's still way more consistent than any player below him and deserves to be considered in the same tier as Mutaking. And so we come to the last major argument within the top 10 that is just as close as all their sets this year: Zane versus Wizzrobe. Both have arguably had the best year of their entire careers, which involved winning a tournament over Hbox for both of these players, but who had the better year? Well, when we compared these two 3 months ago after Zane's win at Shine, I said that Wizzrobe had the slight edge over Zane because he had proved himself more against the 7 to 10 range of players, and also because he had a smaller depth of losses. Since then, Zane still hasn't had the chance to play Amsa and lost another set to Axe, but was finally able to end his losing streak against Wizzy at GTX. Also in the events since then, it's become clear that both of these players appear to have a problem in the Captain Falcon matchup, as it stopped both of them one set short of winning smaller events. But as Wizzrobe started to drop more sets to non-top 10 players, while Zane continued to take Hbox, Plouffe, and Mango to game 4 and 5 sets, I've shifted my ranking of the two to now have Zane just slightly higher than Wizzrobe. Zane still has a ton of bad losses from the beginning of the year when he was still ascending, but his ability to consistently look like a threat against top players, and the fact that he is one of the few people in Melee's history to ever win a super major, leads me to give him the 7th place nod. And Wizzrobe has still had one hell of a year, and the fact that he's consistently a scary name for Hungrybox and Mutaking to see in bracket is an amazing thing for a player to be able to boast. Then at 9th, we have another almost guaranteed lock in the form of one of the most likable guys in Melee, Amsa. He's had just as amazing peaks this year as the other two players ranked ahead of him, with him taking sets off of Hungrybox, Plouffe, Mewtwo, Wizzrobe, and Axe all this year. Amsa's consistency has been incredible as well, with his losses to Bladewise at Poya Pounds early in the year, and Cobalt at Evo being the only real out-of-place losses for the Yoshi. He's pretty much in the same skill tier as Wizzrobe and Zane, but he's only not really in that conversation for 7th because he lacks a tournament win over Hungrybox, which is such a rare commodity. So despite his 1 spot fall from the summer ranking, you shouldn't be surprised if Amsa makes it back to 8th or even jumps to 7th by next summer. Finally, we come to the 10th spot. At times throughout the year, the discussion of who claimed this spot were pretty difficult, with it potentially being SFATs, Crushes, or even S2Js, but as we come to the end of the year, it's pretty clear that Axe will claim the title of Melee's 10th best player in 2018. Axe just wasn't able to put up results to keep up with the explosive years of the 3 players above him, and he had a bad year relative to his past glory, but by no means a bad year. He was one of the 2 non-top 6 players to be able to take a set off Leffen this year, and is able to boast a 2-0 record against Mewtwo, which are major factors in why no one can really touch his claim for 10th. But his bad losses to players like Nintendude, Meds, Ginger, and Cobalt weigh him down enough to be out of striking distance for his former rank. Axe has always been good and will always be good, so I don't think one bad summer should cause anyone to lose faith in Pikachu's champion. He's shown that he is still more than capable of beating top players, and he's going to become a huge thorn in Zane's side because of how well he does in the matchup. And with that, our list of 2018's top 10 players is finished. If you're looking for a deeper discussion on this list, I've already streamed my ranking of the top 25, some of which have changed since that stream, so if you're interested in how I came to some of these conclusions, it'll be linked at the end of the video. And if those 4 hours of streams isn't enough, myself, Pikachu942, and Melee Stats member Oven talked all about rankings on the last episode of the Melee Stats podcast, which will also be linked to the end of this video. As ranking season goes on, I'll be streaming the rest of my ballot selection process over on Twitch, so follow me over there or on Twitter to know when I go live. And I think that about does it for this video. I've been SaveAsUntitled, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.